Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and nice to have in the studio with us today Dr. Joel Klein. He's with Ventana Wellness, and we'll be taking your questions. By the way, you're welcome to call in anytime. We're talking about a big subject today. Maybe you have some questions about it. The phone number is 541-776-5368 or toll-free 800-373-5368. And by the way, maybe there's some topics in the future you'd like to have Dr. Klein tackle, like whatever.
Whatever. There's so much out there, and
anything they want to. So if you've got a subject that's you want him to talk about in the future, I'll tell you what you do. Email us, theDove at theDove.us, and then we'll talk to Dr. Klein and we'll get him in to talk about those various topics. So maybe there's something you're very concerned about, from chronic pain to diabetes to cancer, whatever. Just email us a topic that you'd like him to maybe tackle in the future. And just email us, theDove at theDove.us. But today, we want to talk about diabetes, which is a big, big thing. But before we do, today is National Chocolate Day, Dr. Klein.
Couldn't have asked for any better synergy or synchronicity, as Carl Jung would have called it.
Okay, so the difference between milk chocolate and dark chocolate.
Milk chocolate's mostly, I'm looking at the ingredients here. Number one ingredient, milk chocolate. The first ingredient is sugar.
Okay.
So that's part of the issue.
Yeah.
Whereas other chocolates, and you can see now that, especially they're selling ones now that are much more higher in the cocoa content, just the actual cocoa, 70%, 80% you'll find these things. And that's where all of these things, and of course, I haven't checked on this, but I would wager that these studies that have come out about, all the benefits of chocolate may be financed by the chocolate people, but nevertheless, there are these good antioxidants. When the more natural it is, there's going to be antioxidants in there, but there's also what are called methylxanthines, which are caffeine-like derivatives. Oh. So that's why people can get some stimulation, have to look at it from there. But there are some benefits, and I don't want to tell people absolutely not, but if you want to do, especially if we're talking about diabetes, we need to cut back. Eliminate is what I'm going to say today, the sugar.
Okay. All right, let's get into this. If you have any questions for Dr. Klein about diabetes, 541-776-5368, or if you're outside the immediate area listening or watching, feel free to give us a call, toll-free, 800-373-5368. All right, diabetes, huge. I don't almost call it somewhat epidemic, but what is it? What is diabetes?
Epidemic, I think, is the absolute word.
Okay.
So diabetes is a shorthand. And again, most of these medical diagnoses, so the word diabetes just means flowing through.
Okay.
That's all that word means. Because people with very high blood sugars, the sugar's spilling into their kidneys and their urine, and one of the hallmarks of people with uncontrolled diabetes is they're urinating all the time because they're passing out all this sugar, and then that's where the name comes from. It's been defined, and it's an artificial definition by blood sugar.
Okay. Whereas
a fasting blood sugar of greater than 125 consistently, or after eating blood sugar, and I actually forget the number, maybe greater than 160, is what's been the diagnosis based on blood sugar. But if you really look at the disease of what is diabetes, and we're talking about type 2 diabetes at this point, because that's the biggest problem, it is actually, the blood sugar is a side effect, you could say, of the actual cause, what's the underlying the disease, and that is a disease of insulin resistance. And people have heard that term, and our bodies actually become resistant to insulin over time. Somewhat in the same way, if your body is bombarded with stimuli, I mean, these are different mechanisms, but let's say you're in a room with very loud noise or high volume machinery for a long time, and you walk out, you can't hear, because your body's adjusted to that high level of noise, and it takes a while to come back. Same thing with diabetes. You've actually become resistant to the action of insulin. And that is the underlying cause. So actually, when you look at type 2 diabetics, the insulin levels in their body are high because the body keeps trying to force more on top of that, and they're resistant. And is that insulin resistance that causes innumerable biochemical and physiologic effects that we then associate with diabetes, in addition, even more so than just what the high sugar does.
So, is this insulin issue directly tied to sugar?
Yes.
Okay.
Over time, what the stimulus that we're reacting to is being bombarded with foods that are very easily turned into sugar. Obviously sugar, but then we're obviously talking about the processed carbohydrates without the fiber in them. There's bread, pasta, crackers, chips, cookies, cereal, tortillas, all these things that we're eating that constantly bombard our body and that overstimulate the production of insulin. And over years, again, that overstimulation, that excess stimulation to the body develops somewhat of a resistance as a protection to that.
All right, let me skip forward and then we'll come back. Can you be cured?
I think you can. Now, some people would say that, well, no, once you have it. But no, I think this is a completely, I use cure as kind of a come-on phrase. I think it can be reversed.
Okay.
Is really the thing. And so that, yeah, actually you don't have it.
Nutrition and diet, right?
Diet, exercise are going to be the predominant roles here, with certain amount of supplementation, depending on the circumstances. And I know there was a Dr. Lee Broadhurst at the USDA, and I heard her at a talk one time say, diabetes is not a disease. Huh. It is the natural outcome of the standard American diet. Now, there's more to it than that, and we're discovering some things about, believe it or not, how, because people who are very overweight or even obese, and they're not diabetic. Right. Some of this is a genetic component. Some of it, there actually is a lot of research implicating the disturbance of the ecology of our gut, with overgrowth of bad bacteria, creating an inflammatory response that then also contributes to the diabetes.
Mm. All right. Again, if you got any questions about this, you're welcome to join us, 541-776-5368. So you kind of touched on it. Diabetes can or cannot be hereditary.
Well, here's the whole thing about hereditary, and I've talked about this on the show before, and I want to hammer it home. There is not a gene for diabetes. There's not like one gene. We've gotten into this thinking of very simplistic causes. What you inherit is a tendency for almost any of these diseases. Now, not your blood type, and there are certain things that really are a gene carried on a chromosome. They're actually much rarer, those diseases. They get a lot of, it's sexy to talk about them, but they're much more rare. What you inherit is a tendency, and how that tendency gets expressed is diet, stress, environmental toxins, and lifestyle issues. All of these actually determine how your genes are read, and how the genes are expressed is what most of the genetic research is coming out. When they did the Human Genome Project, they thought they were going for the Holy Grail. We're going to find the genetic causes of all these diseases. No, they found out that that's actually not the case, that there's a very small amount of DNA that actually codes for specific things. The rest of it has to do with literally how the code is read and translated.
All right, so before we take a break, give us some beginning symptoms of whether or not you're becoming diabetic.
Well, sometimes it's just, we're catching it early and earlier because people are coming in because you can just be tired. Because the sugar is not getting into your cells. It's in your bloodstream, it's not getting into your cells, so you're not getting energy from it. As the blood sugar goes higher and higher and overwhelms the system, then you get blurry vision. Then you can get, what happens is that sugar spills into your urine and then pools in water. So people find they're urinating all the time, and because of that, they're thirsty all the time because they're trying to keep up with all this water that they're losing, and also maybe hungry again because the sugar's not getting into their cells, so their body is sensing a lack of food. Those are later complications. Obviously, we're discovering people earlier and earlier, and we need to look at people, anybody who's diagnosed with any kind of like heart disease, any of these kind of accelerated aging things. Are now looking at even Alzheimer's or certain dementia as caused by diabetes of the brain, increasing inflammation. So a lot of these chronic diseases should also, we're always looking at blood sugar.
So does it show up in a blood test? Is that
Absolutely. That's the diagnosis at this point, but that's what I wanted to point out at the beginning, is that is an overly simplistic view of what diabetes is. It is not just high blood sugar. High blood sugar is one of the manifestations of the underlying roots that go into this insulin resistance issue, but the diagnosis is by blood test.
Okay, because a lot of people just pooped out, but is it diabetes or something else? Or
all of it together. Yeah, and hormones, as we always talk about, but what's interesting is the diabetes and the insulin resistance will pull down your hormone levels. So they can all be involved in there, but that's certainly one of the things to look at.
All right. If you got any questions, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to him more about this. You're saying it's epidemic. I would agree with it.
Well, the CDC says that by 2050, a third of this country will be diabetic. 30% of this country will be diabetic by 2050.
Just because we're eating too much synthetic
Because
foods.
we're eating high calorie, no value foods, and we're becoming more sedentary, and even some of these environmental toxins and things like messing up the gut with too many antibiotics and these kind of things that are contributing.
Okay, so a diet soda doesn't necessarily meet the...
No, in fact, there's other problems with diet sodas. So.
All right, Dr. Joel Klein's with us, 776-5368 is the local number, toll-free 800-373-5368. And by the way, if you have a topic that you'd like for him to discuss in the future, email us, theDove at theDove.us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, theDove.us.
Okay, we're back with Dr. Joel Klein, and he's the lead physician there at Ventana Wellness, and you're more than welcome to give us a call and be a part of what we're doing here. 800-373-5368 is the toll-free number. If you're outside the immediate Medford area, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. 800-373-5368, and the local number is 541-776-5368. And again, reminding you, if there's a topic in the future you'd like Dr. Klein to tackle, send us an email, theDove at theDove.us, and we'll get that over to him, and he can put that on his schedule and talk about those items in the future. But today we're taking on diabetes. Huge. It is epidemic. I'm really disturbed to see so many young people getting it. I would assume, again, it's the diet issue.
Yep, 100%.
And you're saying it is reversible. We can get into that a little bit. But it also can kill you.
Oh, of course. But it's a very slow, agonizing death most of the time. Yes, there's much higher risk of heart attacks, strokes, these types of things. But general quality of life, as we were talking about during the break, of people who ultimately, if the circulation breaks down and wind up needing amputations because the progression of the blood vessel disease that just keeps cutting off circulation. Just general quality of life when the nerves get damaged, then they lose sensation. And all of these different just kind of just progressive worsening of function.
Okay. All right, so the types. What are the
well, it's type 1 and 2, and we're mostly talking about type 2. Type 1 still is the childhood type of diabetes where it may be both an infectious and autoimmune, with an infectious trigger, where they're literally the cells in the pancreas that make insulin are killed off and they have to be on insulin forever. Much harder to deal with. That's an insulin deficiency problem, not an insulin resistance problem. The type 2 is the insulin resistance problem that people who are overweight particularly will have more fat around the waist because that abdominal fat literally contributes to the production of the diabetes, and they then have a vicious cycle on each other. So it's the type 2 that we're mostly concerned about, as epidemic.
All right, so what do we do, Coach?
Well, that's the thing. So the cause, we have to, insulin levels need to be brought down. So insulin levels are already high in type 2 because you've developed this resistance. So you already have high insulin levels, and it is the high insulin levels that are causing a lot of the destructive problems. So we need to get insulin levels down by not eating foods that stimulate insulin. So we're not eating sugar and processed carbohydrates. And I go through the list again: bread, pasta, crackers, chips, cookies, cereal, tortillas, all of these things, especially first thing in the morning. Having cereal for breakfast is probably the worst thing you could possibly do in this case, because that sets your insulin thermostat for the rest of the day into a higher mode because your body is producing it. When you don't, it turns out that your insulin response to lunch has more to do with what you ate for breakfast. So it really is getting breakfast being more protein and healthy fats. And in this case, the healthy fats in the diet are the fats in olives, olive oil, and avocados. those are literally medicinal for diabetics. So there are people who put people on 4 tablespoons of olive oil a day, somehow worked into their diet. To do that. And again, getting rid of the processed foods in particular, and then some form of activity, so if possible. So the best thing to do would be to exercise first thing in the morning. And it turns out it's not how hard you do it, it's how long you do it, which is the worst case because people don't have time. But for like 30 to 45 minutes, working up to it, and then having a low carbohydrate breakfast. We'll keep working the insulin thermostat down then and continue through the rest of the day. And you just have to do that inexorably, and it may take a couple of years sometimes to reverse the issue. Other hormones need to be balanced because, again, your metabolism is going to be hitting only on a few cylinders if your thyroid's out of whack or your other hormones are out of whack. So we have to look at these things as well because that also becomes a vicious cycle. But the main thing is the dietary stuff, and I tell people, people want to negotiate and how much they can get away with. And I say, it says, the problem, this metabolism is as if you're an ocean liner going full head of steam in the wrong direction. There's a lot of inertia behind it. You're not going to turn it around by tweaking the rudder. You got to apply full force to it for an extended period of time to get the thing turned all the way around. Now, once you're turned around, you have that same inertia working for you in a positive direction. You can get away with things better at that point, but usually by that time, people don't even want it anymore. A lot of their cravings have to do with negative cycles that get set up because of the insulin resistance, and they actually do better. And yes, but you can indulge and you can do these things. But in the beginning, it really takes a concerted effort over time.
Wow, this produces a couple of questions. Protein, where does that play in?
Well, protein plays a big role. Now, there's debates. You don't want to overdo protein, but protein does stimulate insulin, but not quite as much as carbohydrates do. But you don't want, we've talked about you need protein, but it's not like you should be just eating big steaks, because that's going to put a stress on the kidneys. I tell people it's like 2/3 of your plate should be vegetables and 1/3 maybe protein, if you're going to do it that way. The most important thing is fat. Fat is the only molecule that doesn't require any insulin for its metabolism. And again, we get into the healthy fats, which is the omega-9 oleic acid that's medicinal for that's in olives, olive oil, and avocados.
Wow. All right, so what role does exercise play? What are you doing with exercise?
With exercise, what happens is you're getting insulin out of the bloodstream into the cells independent of the action of insulin. So you're bypassing where the blockage is. And most of this insulin resistance, a lot of it occurs in muscle tissue. So you're reconditioning the muscle to get glucose independent of insulin and also helping get insulin levels down that way.
Wow. All right. Now, in time, is the diabetic who's taking insulin, are they on some kind of a collision course?
It's a deal with the devil. They may be bringing their blood sugars down, but it's making them worse in most other ways. And again, this is a longer discussion. A lot of the damage from diabetes is from the extra sugar being around, attaching itself to proteins, making them sticky. But a lot of it is not from that. And the problem is you may be helping somebody bring their sugars down, but you're making these underlying inflammation and other problems worse, and you're actually causing them to gain more weight, which is the worst thing you could possibly be doing. And that's what happens when people take actual insulin. So the first thing I want to do is work as hard as we can with the diet and exercise to see if we can get rid of the insulin over time.
All right. Diabetic seizures, they could be quite dramatic, right?
Diabetic seizures?
Well, is that what they are when somebody has a low blood sugar?
Oh, no, hypoglycemic reactions, but that's only in diabetics. That's because they either took too much insulin or they're on too high medication or they didn't eat.
Okay.
But that's, yes. So low blood sugar is actually more dangerous even than high blood sugar, acutely, because you can pass out, you can have a heart attack or whatever. I wouldn't worry about that as much of, that's up to when the doctor treating the patient has to be aware what medications you're using, how we structure the diet to make sure that doesn't happen. But that's more of a medication monitoring and management issue.
Okay. So too much or not enough of one or the other?
It's a balance, right. But if you're over-medicating people or they're not eating, yes, then you're going to drop the sugar low, and that's going to cause a problem too.
All right, in your industry, the medical industry, are we just too quick to call people diabetic?
No. I think that, they've defined it. The thing is, they've defined it as this level of fasting blood sugar 125, but it's a spectrum all the way. People who are now calling them pre-diabetic because they're not really diabetic, but they're not quite normal either. I don't think that we're using the label prematurely. There's a medical definition. We use that here. You fit the definition. Although I just saw a guy in the office even on Thursday. His 3-month test that we call an A1C was clearly in the diabetic range when I first saw him. It was 7.1 or something, and normal is diabetic is 6.5. Normal is 5.5 and below. 3 months of diet work, and that's all I've done with him, and it was 5.7. So he's now went from diabetic to pre-diabetic with no medical treatment. Okay.
Can a damaged pancreas be repaired?
Well, the pancreas issue, again, is more the type 1 diabetes. The cells have been killed off. Usually, like I say, the type 1, they did some studies way back, seeing people when they were newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and putting them on these strong immunosuppressive drugs that they give transplant patients and all that. And it worked a little bit, but I've never seen anything after that. But usually if they're killed off, that's kind of it. But again, that's not the issue we're talking about. Now, sometimes adult diabetics, if they come in initially way out of control, and they all even have some insulin deficiency issues as well, sometimes the high blood sugar poisons the cells but doesn't kill them. And you bring the blood sugars down, and all of a sudden things can recover, and they can sometimes come out of it.
Well, big issue. So first thing is to look for the symptoms, which usually are thirsty, lack of energy, urinating a lot.
But that's, again, that's when it's become more advanced along that. So sometimes, yeah, it's just going to be fatigue, visual change, because it changes. The blood sugar issues cause the lens of your eye to change shape. So all of a sudden your vision, will be blurry with that as well.
Wow.
But it's more so, we can actually monitor people way before they have symptoms. So if people are overweight, obviously if they have a family history, these kind of things, we can easily check blood work and catch them way before they become symptomatic.
Do you have, if somebody comes to you and they're in this pre-diabetic stage, or maybe they're diabetic,
right,
do you have a recommended diet plan you give them?
Oh yeah. I have a couple of them, and then we work with them, and we have somebody in the office who coaches people on that as well. Yeah, I'm very, very specific, and I have menu suggestion plans and what we want to aim for and what we want to do. Yeah, we're going to start with that right off the bat.
So what do you recommend for breakfast if it's not cereal?
Quite frankly, the old eggs and bacon. Sausage is probably not. I don't know, bacon occasionally.
Sugars don't go.
No, sugar-free yogurt. You can put a little bit of fruit in it, but yeah, usually I go with more protein. You can do a little bit of carbohydrate, but predominantly protein and fat. So I know that's always a hard one. Nuts, you don't want to do granola. It has too much sugar in it. So I usually tell them eggs, turkey bacon, these kind of things. Or some people will do, leftovers from dinner. Have dinner for breakfast with protein and vegetables.
Okay, there you go. Well, Dr. Klein, you're interesting. All right. Again, if you want to get a hold of him, ventanawellness.com,
right.
ventanawellness.com. And you can see all the resources there. And again, if you have a subject in the future you'd like Dr. Klein to tackle, email us at theDove@theDove.us, and we can get that on the docket and get him talking about this. But diabetes, don't take it lightly. If you're dealing with this, take it very seriously. And
treatable, 100% treatable.
I'll have to say this, everybody I know that has had diabetes that took on a lifestyle change came out the other end much better.
Yep, absolutely.
Much better. Now, some got off insulin entirely, some got it greatly reduced, but it was a huge improvement.
Yep.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. Compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us. or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. Well, earlier, our own Steve Johnson had a chance to talk to Jackie Agee. Now, she's the Development Director for Salvation Army, and in particular, the Salvation Army's Hope House, which deals with homelessness, and it is a big issue. Let's join their conversation.
Well, you've heard of the Salvation Army before, if not at Thanksgiving and at Christmas as well, but you know, they do stuff otherwise than just those two hot times of the year. And joining us today from the Salvation Army is Jackie Agee. We talk to you quite often. Probably last time was Christmas, I'm thinking.
I think it
may
was.
have been that long ago.
Yes.
And also Jennifer, who is a former resident of what is called Hope House, and that's what we are going to find out a little bit about. Now, so Salvation Army, you know, for people who might just think about you at the holiday season and also the thrift shop and all that kind of stuff, the Hope House might be a new idea. So Jackie, why don't you tell us first of all, what's the concept behind the Hope House?
Well, the Hope House is our transitional living center for homeless men, women, and families with children, minor children. And what we do is we offer a 2-year program that gives the homeless an opportunity to get back on their feet, to take care of the challenges that they have in their life, whether it be with debt or drug and alcohol addiction. They learn how to look for a job and do resumes, work on budgeting, you know, learn life skills that will help them make the transition into permanent housing.
And how long has that been operating in our
Well,
area?
actually, the transitional program has been here since 1996, and we're over on Cruise Road, which is kind of tucked back behind Wendy's and the new Natural Grocers. And if you were standing at Rogue Valley Mall looking straight across, it's tucked back in there. But we work with single men, single women, and as I mentioned, families with children, and provide them a safe, you know, clean environment where they can work on what led to their homelessness and hopefully get back on their feet to make a transition back into the community.
Do they approach you to say, you know, I've got some needs and can you help me out, or how does that work?
We get a lot of referrals from other agencies, and you know, and people self-refer as well. We work very closely with, you know, the drug and alcohol treatment facilities here, as well as the St. Vincent de Paul and the Gospel Mission, and you know, Department of Human Services. We get a lot of referrals. We have a lot of vets in our program as well, so we work with the Veterans Administration, and so they come to our program.
They may be then suggested from the Veterans Administration?
Correct,
too? Okay.
yes.
Does every Salvation Army have a Hope House?
No. No, every Salvation Army kind of has its own programs. There are programs up in Portland that are similar, but in terms of what's here in Oregon, I believe we're the only one that has a transitional living facility here in Oregon, except for what we have up in Portland.
And why this particular transitional housing area? Is there any reason why this area might be a magnet for that
No,
need?
not really. I think it's just a matter of kind of how it started. Our building over on Cruise Road, to my understanding, used to be what was called a wet facility, where people could come who were, you know, using, you know, were drunk or using drugs, and now it's a clean and sober environment. We have zero tolerance for alcohol and drug use. So that, you know, that was our building, and subsequent to that building, we actually expanded in 2010 and added 12 new apartments for families with children.
Oh, really?
So we've grown our program significantly.
And how big would Hope House be able to hold people then? How
Well,
many?
right now, on an average every year, we handle about 220 individuals, and that usually includes about 25 to 28 families, you know, somewhere between 70 and 80 children, and then the rest would be single men and single women.
Okay. Well, Jennifer, why don't you tell us a little your story of Hope House? How'd this all come about, where you found out about it even?
I was in drug and alcohol treatment when I found out about Hope House, and then from there they took me there, where I filled out the application and got the manual on all the rules and everything that was Hope House, and it was a little daunting.
Well, it's really pretty strict.
You know,
Yeah.
I was out there doing whatever I wanted to do for many, many years, and had no rules, just did what I wanted, you know, and I got into treatment, and I got into family court, which is a community treatment court in this valley. And so they were making me do things and making me follow rules. And then I went to the Hope House, and they made me follow rules. And now I just follow them. You know, now I just it's just a part of my life now, and I'm so thankful for them because they provided me a safe, secure place for my kids to be at. Before I got there, I was about ready to give them up because I couldn't stay clean and sober. And I didn't think that I was the mother for them. And then going there, I got a little bit of self-esteem behind me with their support, and they were pushing me even against my own will. Sometimes they continued to push me, and it made me believe in myself again, to where I could actually get some self-sufficiency going, to where I could believe that I could be the mother that my children needed me to be. How
old were your kids at that time?
Oh, let's see, that was in 2011 that I came there. So Gina was 11, and then I also got custody recently, last May, of one of my kids that was up in Alaska, had abuse issues up there. So as I was there, I got him too. And then I had an...
Is he younger?
Now he is 11.
Wow.
And
so
then,
these were, they were not like little toddlers.
And then I have a 5- and a 6-year-old too.
Oh.
So they were
How many of you moved in then to the Hope House? Were there just you and your daughter?
It was me in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
And then I didn't get the kids back until quite some time later.
While you were at the Hope House? Okay. And how long were you there?
I was there
a little over 2 years. Yeah.
Is that a normal length of time for somebody to be there?
Well, I mean, people can stay up to 2 years, and then sometimes we extend that, which we did in Jennifer's case. I think our average now is probably right around a year.
Okay.
Because, you know, we have some people who come in that don't stay very long, and then we have others who stay longer. I mean, really, for someone who's been homeless and struggled with all the things that, like Jennifer had struggled with, you know, 30 or 45 days or even 6 months really isn't long enough to deal with everything and to really get solid, you know, grounded in a self-sufficient lifestyle that's going to help, you know, sustain them in the community at large.
Well, it sounds like it was exactly what you needed at that time for it all. Do the staff go through training to be able to understand how to deal with those people? Because it sounds like you're going to get any number of backgrounds of individuals who come in.
We get, you know, we have some, you know, resources through the Salvation Army because we have transitional facilities throughout the country.
Right.
So we have a lot of, you know, great resources that way. And we do get, you know, people who come in. The VA has worked with us really closely and done some training. And we do, you know, special seminars and that type of thing. In fact, our director this summer is going to be going to a 1-week training course of working with people with drug and alcohol issues.
I see. Is this one of the longer transitional facilities from what you know that the Salvation Army has? I mean, it could be several years that somebody's in the program.
I mean, 2 years really is the maximum. I think that's pretty much our philosophy, that people need more time. And so from, you know, all the programs that I'm aware of, at least there's one in San Francisco, and I believe that's another 2-year program. You know, many of the other shelters around here are shelters, and they're more emergency shelters,
yeah,
so that's
true.
a shorter length of time. So ours is a transitional facility. I mean, somebody has to be clean and sober for 30 days before they can come into our program.
Oh, I see.
And
in the Hope House itself.
Into Hope
right
House,
now.
correct.
Because you also have more of that emergency facility too, don't you?
No, we don't.
You don't.
No,
Okay,
we're
so you take the
strictly
longer
transitional.
term. Okay.
Yeah, and I think back in the day, before 1996, we were more of an emergency shelter, similar to, you know, some of the programs we've had in, you know, bigger cities.
Let's talk, Jennifer, a little bit about it. It sounds like when you first got there, you thought, boy, there's a lot of rules, and is this really for me? But at some point then you said, I got to stick this out. What was it that kind of caused you to realize, all right, this is the place I should be?
Well, I had quite a significant amount of years hanging over my head for prison time. And I had relapsed a couple times prior to going there, so this was the last chance. This was the last ditch effort.
And you realized that at the time,
and
right?
I realized that at the time. It was told to me in court very plainly. And I really did not want to come into the Hope House because I didn't know if I could even remember all the rules. But now looking back and at the end of my stay, that's a no-brainer. I mean, they're just rules that normal people follow, and it really became my training wheels for life. And if it wasn't so long of a stay, I couldn't have done it in 6 months or a year.
You needed that time.
I needed that time to really learn a different way to live.
Now, are you able? You're able to talk into the lives of some of the other people. You may see some come in and say, "Boy, this is a lot like where I was a couple of years ago." Are you able to talk to them at all about?
Absolutely.
Keep it. I mean, are you convincing? You probably are. I would imagine after having been there.
Because I have had a vast amount of experience out there, and I've had a lot of trauma situations, and I've seen a lot of different walks of life, and I've come through that, and I've transitioned and just made a huge 180. And normally people look at me and they don't think that I was like that at one time, but I actually have proof and pictures that I can show people and say, look, I qualify, and this is what happened, and this is how I made a change for the better.
And it wasn't that long ago, really.
It wasn't that long ago. I'm coming up on 3 years clean and sober on the 2nd of January.
Let me ask both of you, when you have to approach a situation that you know this person needs help, I would imagine you're coming up against similar trends that you have to kind of break through. What is the hardest way to get somebody who might be a relative or a friend, that somebody who's listening and watching this right now might say, you know, I can relate to somebody who's out there, as you were saying. What's the best way to connect with them, to get them help so that they know they got to be at a place like Hope House? Either of you insight on that?
You know, hopefully they're, you know, involved with some kind of social services, human services agency, and, you know, has that information and knows what's available to them. You know, we do work really closely with other agencies, and I would imagine anybody who is in those circumstances, you know, somebody's aware of them, one of the agencies, and knows of our program and can send them to us. But, you know, people who do come into our program really need to want to change their lives.
Kind of like you were mentioning, Jennifer.
You know, we recently did an intake on a person. It was a man, and we, you know, did the interview, and it was all, you know, he was referred to us from an agency, and it was all hunky-dory, and when he found out there was a 7 o'clock curfew, he just said, I can't do this, and he walked out. So, you know, really, it is mostly referrals, and, you know, and I think sometimes, you know, people out in the community, you know, those who, you know, are homeless and maybe have gone through this program, but it didn't work for them for whatever reason. They, you know, they may talk to somebody that they meet, and that person may decide to come knock on our door and find out what's what. But it's, you know, people have to really want to change their lives, because, as Jennifer said, we have rules, we have expectations. They come in, they set an action plan, a self-sufficiency plan, they set goals, and they work with their case manager in getting those goals accomplished. And, you know, it's not easy, but for those who have made it through successfully, it's worth it. Yeah.
Jennifer, glad to hear your story. That's terrific. Boy, just in a couple of years how a life can be changed like that. That's terrific. And thanks for letting us know about something we might have heard about, but Jackie, now we know more about the Salvation Army's Hope House. And they can get in contact with you if they have any questions, I suppose, right? Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Steve.
The Hope House and, of course, the Salvation Army here on Focus Today.
Thank you, Steve. Coming up next, do you deal with chronic pain? I think you'll find our next guest to be pretty inspiring. We're going to talk to Barby Ingle coming up in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. Well, we have a very special guest. We have Barby Ingle with us. She is the Executive Director of Power of Pain Foundation, a volunteer chronic pain educator and pain advocate. And I don't know if you deal with chronic pain. Perhaps you do. Her own story is fascinating. and what's going on, and the results of this financially and the impact upon people's lives is just incredible. Barby, nice to have you. Good to see you.
Thank you, Perry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, your own story is fascinating. Quickly, just give us the Reader's Digest version of it.
In 2002, I was in an auto accident. It caused a neuroautoimmune disease to start, and it left me in a state where I had chronic pain as well as some other symptoms going on, and it took 3 years for doctors to diagnose me. During that time, they did everything from take out my rib to shoulder surgery. I had tumors grow in my mouth and had to have oral surgery, internal bleeding, and then it still took another 4 more years after that to get the proper treatment.
Wow, so you went through all of that before you realized you were being diagnosed wrong.
Correct. Three years until I got the proper diagnosis, and then 4 more years until I got the proper treatment.
Not to mention, financially, it took its toll.
It wiped me out. I went from doing very well in life to food stamps and bankruptcy, and I've had to build myself back up and learn the medical system. And that's why I speak out, is because this shouldn't happen to other people, but we're not taught. We should be taught from childhood, but we're not, how to deal with the health system, especially dealing with the bills that we're going to be facing with a chronic disease. So what's happened here, Barbie? Is the system broken? I mean, don't they look at things carefully? The system is broken. However, JACO and the Medical Billing Association of America have said that they've done studies and shown that 8 out of 10 medical bills has a mistake. So if the consumer, the patient, isn't aware of this and isn't checking their explanation of benefits when their insurance companies send them statements, or they aren't filing for appeals, they can amass a large amount of medical bills, and a lot of them could have been avoided, or you didn't even owe the money in the first place. It all was due to a clerical error. Wow. So how did you become a pain advocate? I became a pain advocate because of what had happened to me going through the process of dealing and learning how to deal with a chronic pain disease, and realizing that I didn't have these skills and I had to learn it the hard way. I paid thousands and thousands of dollars that I didn't need to pay. And going through this experience and looking back, had I just taken a little time in the beginning to look at my explanation of benefits that my insurance company sent and compared that to what the doctor's bill said, I would have seen that my patient responsibility was a lot lower than the amount of money that I ended up paying out. And, you know, I even sold my house to pay my medical bills. So I went like from the top of the world to having nothing. And I could have avoided a lot of it had I just known how to read those bills. Are you in pain today? I am in remission today. I undergo infusion therapy approximately every 3 months. It's a 2-day infusion, similar to what a cancer patient goes through with chemotherapy, but they use other medication that works on my nervous system. I did end up in a wheelchair for a time, almost 7 years, and I'm able to walk today. So I am getting the proper treatment, and it just took a while to learn the process of how to do that and how to get my insurance to cover it. What is RSD? RSD is a neuroautoimmune disease that they found in 2011. There's 2 autoantigens in my blood that attack my system. R stands for reflex, anything in your body that's automatic, your heartbeat, your intestines, your vision, hearing. So it affects all of those areas. Your sympathetic is the S, and that's my sympathetic nervous system that causes chronic burning pain, as if someone put lighter fluid on me and caught me on fire, and I just couldn't put it out. And dystrophy is a loss of muscle and bone. So I do have a lot of osteopenia and loss of muscle. So I have chronic weakness as well. Wow. Yeah. You know, you're also another fulfillment of something I've said for so many years on radio and television. That is, whatever God saves you from or brings you through, he turns you around, makes you a minister too. And that's exactly what's happened to you. Absolutely. I, from the age of 4 until my 30th birthday, right before my 30th birthday, I was a cheerleader, and I was doing the flips and the gymnastics and the dancing, and I thought that that's what I'd be doing the rest of my life. And then this happened to me, and here I am 12 years later, and I'm still a cheerleader. Now, instead of being a physical cheerleader, I'm a cheerleader of hope and possibility, and I strive to win this game of life.
Yeah.
And I hope that everybody else on my chronic pain team can join me in this fight, and that we can stand up for ourselves and be our own best advocates. So
Good
I
for
am
you.
the cheerleader.
Good
That's
for
my
you.
purpose from God.
Good for you. You bet it is. You know, I don't know, unless somebody is dealing with chronic pain, people don't understand chronic pain and how debilitating it can be. And sometimes we just think, well, it's psychological.
And it does, chronic pain can cause depression, but depression doesn't usually cause chronic pain, which is a misnomer that people have. And yes, you don't understand it. Prior to my accident and getting sick, I was a head coach at Washington State University for the cheerleading and dance program. And when my kids would hurt themselves, I would say, suck it up, put an ACE bandage on, wrap it up, put tape on, get back out on the field, we need you. And then this happened to me, and I realized that there's sometimes that there's things that you just can't overcome so easily. And like you said, until you have it and until you experience it, you don't always understand. So, you know, it's hopefully sharing my story and getting other people to share their stories gets a better understanding in society so that we can do better for our pain citizens.
Has the Obamacare further added to the mix?
It has further added to the mix. Getting new treatment options passed by our insurance companies was very difficult. And now with Obamacare, there's not really an incentive to get anything new passed by the insurance companies. It's going to be even more difficult to get the procedures. For instance, the treatment that I get at Drexel University, there's a waiting list of up to 5 years for patients with the same disease I have to go in and get the treatment that I got that got me out of a wheelchair. And so the impact of Obamacare is just basically slowing down even further the care that we're receiving.
All right, so what do you provide? What can people do to get a hold of you, and what do you do for them?
Sure. I am the executive director of the Power of Pain Foundation, and we do education, social events, awareness events, and access to care issues. We do patient mentoring. We provide resources if patients are having trouble finding a provider in their area that treats their specific condition. We can help align them with the providers in their area that treat lupus, Lyme disease, MS, RSD, Sjogren's, one of the 150 different type of nerve pain diseases that are out there. So they can check out our website, powerofpain.org, for more information, and also to contact me. There's a contact form at the bottom of every page. It's real quick and simple. Fill it out, submit it, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can and help you out.
You mentioned Lyme disease. I know some people who are suffering from that, and a lot of people don't even recognize it or test for it.
Absolutely. Sometimes Lyme disease can be difficult to test for and check for because it can hide in our systems. It can hide in our muscles, and then all of a sudden one day decide to come out or get triggered by, you know, a trauma to come out and attack our bodies. And so with Lyme disease, you really have to get a test specifically where the tick bit you, or you have to do a DNA test, and there's only a few labs in the country that are doing those tests. So it can be difficult to diagnose, and then to treat it, you have to, the Lyme disease itself can form a little sac around it to protect it from being killed off by the antibiotics that the doctors are giving us. So you kind of have to get that sac dealt with first before you can go in and kill the Lyme disease. So a lot of people end up with chronic Lyme disease because they're not being treated properly.
Wow. Fascinating. You know, I think you point out something here. We get overwhelmed when the bills come in. We look at it, we look at the number, and we're not even looking at what the charges are and how many of those things can be challenged, and that's where you come in, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of times the insurance companies will flat out deny a whole claim, and patients will freak out, and, you know, they don't know what to do at that point. And I always say, make sure that you file your appeals, because a lot of times they say no on purpose the first time through. It saves the insurance companies a lot of money, as well as, mistakes are made in those medical bills. So check your medical bills and make sure that you're only paying your patient responsibility portion.
I'm out of time, Barbie. Thank you. It's called Power of Pain Foundation. Thanks for being with us. We'll get together again soon, okay?
Great. Thank you, Perry.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.